Welcome back to Blastland podcasts, no limits, just stories, where we are gonna cut through the noise and dive straight into real conversations that matter. Today, I'm thrilled to have a guest who is not just a game changer, but a true innovator and a very creative man. I'm honored and pleased to welcome Scott Cohen, the former Chief Innovation Officer of Warner Music Group, the co-founder of The Orchard and Jukebox slash JBKX. Scott, very welcome to Blastland.
It's good to be here. I'm excited. I think it should be a lot of fun today.
I'm also extremely excited to be talking to you today. And I love doing some icebreakers in the very beginning of the talk.
Sure.
So, before we start, imagine aliens land with a peaceful mission on planet Earth and demand to understand human creativity through music, art, whatever comes to your mind. But you are the guide. So, what's the first thing you're gonna play for them or show them or bring them to?
Oh my goodness. You this is the icebreaker. You jump right in. Um, yeah, if aliens descend and they want to know about human creativity, I mean, it's not just about music. I think, Homo sapiens, if you go back about 50, 60,000 years ago, you start to see the creativity coming into play as complex speech um, started, and you see like the expanded use of tools and things, where prior to that, for millions of years, you'd see, let's say, an arrowhead and they'd use that. But once humans started with complex speech in the Upper Paleolithic period, they started to be creative. So they got creative with the tools they used, but then they also started to get creative with cave paintings. Instead of just scratches and draws, they started creating cave art, and they started making instruments and making music. And I think you have to take it all the way to the back, to the beginning, and then all the way through to maybe, different folk music in different cultures, to classical music in the West, the Mozart era, up through the kind of rock generation. And again, that creativity, that human creativity, always went in lockstep with um, technical innovations. So whether it was radio or the recording devices or the instruments that were made or the amplification of the instruments, all of the tech that comes along also drives the music creativity, but the tech is creative as well.
That's a very creative answer, Scott.
Sorry, I've never experienced a question like that. An amazing way to start.
Let's
Keep me
get
on my
back
toes.
let's get back a bit to the roots. Let's rewind. Before the titles, before the accolades, who was Scott Cohen as a kid?
Interesting. So as a kid, I was extremely shy, like crazy shy. Wouldn't talk in school or anything. Um, but as I grew older, I was also quite the entrepreneur. From the earliest memories I have as a kid, always trying to make a little business. A lot of, the typical American thing where there's like, a lemonade stand for kids. I was doing all of that and going to neighbors' houses to rake their leaves or shovel their snow or any little odd job, all the way through to when in my teenage years, when I had a painting company, like painting houses. I was a teenager. I'd go to school in the morning, but I might have a crew on a job site. And after school, I would meet them there. And that took me all the way through university. So always an entrepreneur, really, at heart.
What was your very first dream you recall?
It's funny because when I really think about it, I don't know. I don't know that I was one of those kids that had a dream that said, I want to be an astronaut or a fireman, or I want to be a famous businessman or make $1 million. Like, I don't, I never, I can't remember a time that I had those dreams or aspirations, and that continues to today. Like it was always more, one foot in front of the other, just keep marching forward.
Did you ever imagine yourself where you are today?
Not even close. I mean, it's funny. Life just happens, and maybe I've been fortunate enough without any kind of, formal thought process behind it. I always allowed it to take me to 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 you know to to take me to wherever I ended up in my career without having some aspiration of where I wanted to be in my career. Um, Life has its own plan in a way if you're willing to kind of sit back and accept it and kind of roll with it and go with the flow.
Talking about plans and success, probably, and some interesting moves in life. I always love to talk about the so-called complete puzzle picture. You've seen the best and the worst of various industries, especially the music one, but not limited to. We all love talking very much about success, but let's be real, every peak has a valley. What was the darkest moments you recall? Or
Yeah, I mean,
what was the way to success? Or
yeah, I mean, you put it in a really, you know, great way because I've never heard a success story that started like I had an idea, then I, got some money, then I launched a company, then everybody loved the business, and then it went great, and the tech worked, and the customers came in, and I made money and more money, and life was great. Like that's never the path to success. It's not a straight line, up and to the right. If I think about, you know, the deepest depths, God, this is really, tapping into some dark moments in my life. And it would have been in the through the late 90s and the early 2000s, because I started a company with my business partner, Richard Gotterer, called The Orchard. And so it's not a a brand name. It was a B2B business. But we were the first digital distributors of music. So we envisioned a world where people would be creating, consuming music digitally. This is in the mid 90s. I mean, it seems so painfully obvious now, but back then it was not obvious at all. This was a time when people were still on dial up modems and the web didn't have music or video or even photos and was just text based. But we envisioned this world. Problem is, we were so early in it that it was really challenging to make any money because, in the 90s, there wasn't any way, very few ways that you could make money from digital music. I mean, this is before Napster, which was in 1999. And so I got really poor. This is the dark part. I mean, the lowest part. I mean, at the worst, I think I was $3 million in debt. We never raised money on a business plan. We were just operating our company, but turned out we owed everybody money. We owed artists money. We owed the landlord money. We owed, everybody. I owed the IRS in America, the tax authority. I owed them a lot of money. And even though I say I owed them money, they used different terminology. They were like tax evasion and tax fraud, and if you don't pay, you go to prison for 20 years. Um, I had lost my home. I'd lost my car. I'd lost all my possessions. I was homeless and living in the office. I mean, it was dark, dark, struggling times. It wasn't until, for our business, it wasn't until April of 2003 when iTunes launched that that actually we were sitting on the largest catalog of digital rights in the world, and then things turned around pretty quickly because we were like 1/3 of the iTunes music store back then. Um, but up until that, that was some years and years of struggle.
So that is a absolutely crazy story, what you're saying, from the very low to the very high, and it lasted for years, as you say.
Yeah.
How do you, as a human being, deal with that level of special situation, let's call it like that, that really shakes you to the core, and probably some people, also the family is involved. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it I think there's there's a great word in English called grit. It's that real determination. I was 100% confident of the future. I knew what was coming. It was whether or not, you know, my company that Richard and I started would be the one to achieve it. But I knew it. And so I was willing to just put my head down and do whatever was necessary to just continue forward and deal with all the hardships. And with all that said, putting things in perspective, on one level they were really dark days, but on another level, I look at, what people go through in the rest of the world, that how fortunate I was, that, there is a level of, white male privilege, born, to the right family, living in America, New York City at the time. Like already I had privilege, even though I was struggling, and to maintain a little perspective and have some fun in the journey, yeah, I don't know, learn. Maybe it's also my family, my DNA. We're fairly typical New York Jews, and even if you think about what happened to the Jews over the centuries, or even in the 20th century from the Holocaust, even through all that, what do? They become comedians and entertainers. And, what are you going to do when everything goes to shit? You laugh at it, you make a joke, you smile, you power through. And so maybe that's in my DNA, but that was it. It was just a real determination to keep moving forward.
By the way, family, I cannot afford not asking you. You have a very, very fascinating history of your ancestors and your family coming to the States, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, my family were essentially Ukrainian Jews, although it's uncertain where the borders were at the time. And they came over before World War II in the early 1900s, came to America really poor. Like, they weren't coming, in the nicest way. They were getting pushed out of their country because of anti-Semitism, and said, you know what? Better to get on a boat, land in Ellis Island. Came on the shores, very large, family. My grandfather had, I don't know, 4 or 5 brothers and 3 or 4 sisters. And then again, like an American dream and a fairy tale, he became a lawyer, another brother became a doctor, another one was, in finance. They all became quite successful. And maybe that is also part of it, that I remember talking to my grandmother um, when I was still in university, and I was thinking about dropping out because I was doing pretty well as an entrepreneur. This is before the orchard. And she's like, "Are you crazy? Do you know how much we struggled to get here? This was what we had to go through. No, you're not giving. So what? It's a little hard to go to school and you don't like it so much and you're working on the side. Too bad. That's not who we are." So I actually give her a lot of credit. There was a lot of pressure, but the good kind of pressure to live up to certain standards and understand the privilege I had at that time that I didn't recognize. Maybe that's when I first started recognizing the privilege I had.
Fascinating. Scott, by the way, you touched the American dream. Is there an American dream? Does it exist in reality? Because we here, like in Europe or in Eastern Europe, many young people talk about the American dream. Is it true?
Um, Sadly, I think it's going away. I do. I live in London now, and Italy some of the time. But I feel really sad that the American dream that my grandparents and my parents lived through, and even that I got a part of, is not necessarily the same American dream that exists today, because it's feeling closer to a dream than you can make a dream a reality. Again, there's a bit of privilege there. If you come from the right family, of course you can, make your dreams come true. But the the beauty of the original American dream was it didn't matter where you came from, what your religion, the skin color, your culture, didn't matter how much money your parents had or what your surname was. If you worked hard, you could get ahead. I'm not so sure that still exists, that merely working hard, you get ahead, because there's a lot of hardworking Americans that are struggling to stay ahead. And I'll say that in Europe as well. And maybe I'll say that globally.
I see. I see. We talked a bit about the failures and dealing with them, but what about the other side of the medal? Uh, they say success can be as dangerous as failure. Have you ever felt that, where winning too much becomes its own kind of trap?
Yeah, I think that it's a problem about when you succeed. Again, I'm still on the old school side of it, where you reach a certain age and then you succeed. The people that succeeded in the past worked really hard and were willing to grind it out year after year, usually getting their education in there and then becoming expert at what they ever did. We're now in a world where people in their 20s have wild success. And I think that's the problem. No, you're not prepared in your 20s. When I think back to when I was in my 20s, oh my God, I wouldn't have been able to handle that. I think that would have been curse, if anything. Um, there's very few that can handle it. Think of like child actors or famous kids. They're not prepared to handle it. Nobody trains you for that. And I think incredible success in your 20s, which we've seen with a lot of tech companies, also does not prepare you. Nobody's told you what you're supposed to do. So yeah, it can have terrible consequences.
Let's switch a bit the field. A topic that I'm particularly interested in, and this is what we are also standing for with Blastland, is the so-called business, boring question mark. Sometimes, and really quite often, I saw it myself, business, the usual or the unusual, can be really, really painfully boring. But you've always found ways to make it exciting. How do you take something really dry and turn it into entertainment and fun?
You're the first person that's ever said that to me. I always thought business was fascinating. I think companies can become boring when they get too large and they get stale, and work there can be boring. But I've always been really passionate about business, and I think there's lots of cultures that are passionate about business. It's part of who they are, and I think maybe we've confused a passion for business with, you know, think of, modern workers that have to go to some office filled with row after row of cubicles and go, yeah, that's hard to get passionate about that. I get that, but I don't see that as business. I remember during lockdown, I was trying to, I worked at Warner Music Group, and I was explaining to the company, there's a difference between work and business. Meaning, I've never done business in the office. I've done business in a meeting out somewhere, at a cocktail party or dinner, at a conference, meeting people and doing business. When I got to the office, that's where I did work, sit down at my desk, work in a spreadsheet, read a contract, write an email. Work is work. And business is something else, and business is quite exciting. And if people don't make that distinction, then it can get really hard. And I think there's a time and place for both. You have to do work, but you also have to do business. And I think a lot of people get caught in the trap of only doing work, and they're going, but my job is to do this, whatever this is. But no, that's only part of your role. Part of your role is to do the assigned tasks, the work. But another part of the role is to do business. And you can do that inside a large corporation too. You can be really entrepreneurial and connect with the other staff, look for opportunities where it's not my job, but I see that there's gaps, and how can I help the company, fill those gaps, notice things. That's where the fun comes in, the things that fall between the cracks. The person that's willing to jump in and do that is the person that's passionate about business and finds ways and moves up in the world.
That's a great story, especially comparing and distinguishing between work and business, getting the things done when they need to be done, but at the same time having a lot of fun, as per your example.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was the endless debate of whether people should come back to the office or not, And I was like, why? If they can work at home, then why are you driving them back? And so it's not should they go back to the office or shouldn't they, but let's examine that a little better and not just go back to work.
Do people have actually some problems or are a bit scared of having fun at work, not mixing it and not making it the major goal of the day, but at the same time just being a bit more relaxed about communication, about getting the things done in the end at the end of the day, but with a bit more fun? What do you think?
Yeah, well, listen, I think it comes from the company culture, and there's a lot of companies that have a culture of fear, and so it is not fun to go to work. It is, people are doing it and picking up their paycheck, doing what they have to, and they're not going to, do the business and find the things that aren't getting done and be entrepreneurial if there's a culture of fear. Sadly, I keep, post COVID, you actually see that. Which are the companies that try and exert their power over their employees and direct them what they want them to do, rather than think of as a team that they're going to accomplish some greater mission together and get them all on board. And so yeah, it goes back to maybe to foundations of leadership. Are you empowering people to do great work, to do great business, to lead wonderful lives, and by doing that everyone succeeds? Or your definition of leadership is I give orders,
Scott, talking about leadership, what is your personal definition of being a leader?
Again, I think that is that. It's that how can we leverage the people at the company? Anytime I'm at an organization, I always go, I don't need another one of me because I already fill that. I need to find people that are good at the things that I'm not good at, the experts in things. And I was talking to somebody once, and in the UK, I don't know if it happens around the world, there's these things called pub quizzes, where you go into a pub, and then you'd have a table, groups of tables of people, and there'd be a quiz master who would throw out difficult questions. It could be questions about sports or popular culture or history or science. And if you had a table of 4 or 5 people, usually one could think of the answer. but they were tough. And I was thinking about, if you have a large organization, some of these organizations, thousands and thousands of people. Think of it like a pub quiz. Would you just want 5 people to be answering and solving every question? Or would you want to leverage the entire organization? Like you would have the smartest team in the world if you think of them as on your team. And how do we leverage them? Sadly, I don't think enough people think in those terms. Because it's harder to do it that way. It's harder for the leader. What's easier for the leader is everyone shut up. I'm going to tell you what I need you to do. And here's the deadline and just deliver that.
That's really, really, really interesting to hear your thoughts about it. Let's rewind one more time. Scott, tell us about your time being at the pulse of the Orchard and Warner.
Well, I mean, I alluded to it a bit at the Orchard. So being the first digital distributor of music was challenging in those early years. Those were the tough times. But I will say this, when iTunes did launch and we're sitting on this large catalog because we've been amassing it for the previous 8 years, we really saw that kind of hockey stick spike of growth where we were like, oh, we made our first $500,000, our first million, our first 10 million, our first 100 million, the first $1 billion. When I exited the company in 2019, after we had sold in a couple of tranches to Sony, when I exited, the company was doing $1 billion a year and accounted for 20% of Sony Music's revenue. I think I heard that 2024 ended with the Orchard doing $1.5 billion in revenue. So it was, people look at the hockey stick spike, and that to your earlier point, they don't see the challenges you went through in the early days. In the music business, we always go, how many years does it take you to become an overnight success? Because people only see the moment you're successful. They don't see everything that led up to it. But the Orchard was an amazing story of growth. I will also say, to my point about leadership, but then we brought in, Richard and I brought in people that were better equipped, smarter to run the day-to-day of the business. Like we were entrepreneurs, we had ideas, we were out there doing business, but at some point we needed people that were operationally focused, CEOs and COOs that actually knew how to do this, maybe went to school to do that. So, we also took our egos out of it to ensure the business succeeded.
A perfect story, and especially I love the point about the ego. How did you have a problem taking out the ego?
No, not at all. I mean, eye on the prize. I wanted things to succeed. I had just, when I think about the Orchard, I had gone through so much hardship to get it to where it was. I wanted this to succeed. I didn't care whether it was me leading it or somebody else leading it. It just needed to get to the next stage. And I'm here to help. Like, you tell me what I can do to help. Like, so no, taking the ego out was never an issue for me.
Scott, you've premiered My Husband the Cyborg last week. First of all, I want to congratulate you on that. And I'm very excited to hear your story about it. Whose idea was that? How did it come to life?
Well, first of all, I would say my wife premiered it, Susanna. So it's complicated. So back in 2016, when I was still at the Orchard, I inserted 2 titanium rods into my chest and attached a circuit board with a couple of 100 components in an effort to create a new sense, the sense of the electromagnetic field of the planet. I think it was a little, I was, risking things and trying new things and pushing boundaries. I think it was a little more challenging for my wife, particularly going back and looking at the documentary. I was a little too dismissive of what she was going through. So she was a little shocked that one day I had told her I'm going to become a cyborg, and she didn't know what to do. So she picked up a camera and started filming. And instead of becoming a film about technology and the future and senses, it became a film about relationships and how they change and what happens when something comes between a couple and something unexpected and how you work through that. And in a world where technology is becoming more present in our lives than ever before with digital technology, it's probably something that will resonate with a lot of people.
That's a really interesting story. Congratulations to your wife, to you.
Yeah.
And why did this idea come up? I mean, cyborgs is a definition today and for the past decades. Probably for guy from a side, it sounds more like into direction Terminator or something like that. But
But
how was it born? I mean,
well,
why cyborg?
well, it was funny. I was giving a lecture at a university in Barcelona, and I was talking about, you know, technology and where it was going, from old technology to all the way through to, computers, and then the web and mobile phones, and how we use technology and its parallel growth to us. But then what happens as we come together and the technology becomes embedded in us, and looking at it and going, actually, there's a lot of cyborgs already in the world, but the cyborgs are for medical purposes. They have cochlear implants or pacemakers, or even if you think about humans right now, like how many people could say that they're 100% organic? I mean, do they have fillings in their teeth? People have artificial knees and hip replacements. Are you partially organic? Or people that have tattoos and piercings and have had cosmetic procedures. And so I was thinking, surely we can't just do it for medical purposes, and surely we can't just be doing it for, cosmetic. Um, we should do it to make us better. When I think about, how much money we spend on technology to make our phones smarter and our homes smarter, and we're investing all this. Why aren't we investing the same amount, even less, but investing in making humans better? We're so focused on making our iPhone better, our laptop better. Why aren't we investing the same energy and money into making humans better? And so I was having this whole conversation in this lecture, and somebody said, "Well, who's doing it?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. There's some body hackers out there doing it. There's a couple more famous ones like Neil Harbison and Moon Rebus and people like that, but who's really going out and doing it?" And I'm like, "Well, not really anybody." So reluctantly, I figured it was going to have to be me. It wasn't that I wanted to do this. This was the last thing I ever thought about doing. I was just, shooting my mouth off about the future of technology. Um, and then some clever person raised their hand and said, "Yeah, but, put your money where your mouth is." And so I did it with another co-founder, another partner in that company, Liviu Babitz. He and I set up a company called the Cyborg Nest, and that was the basis of the film. Coming home one day and telling my wife, "I'm going to become a cyborg."
I want to imagine uh, how your wife looked at you at this moment.
Mhm. Uh, Probably the way anyone would look at anyone that said, "I'm going to become a cyborg." Like, first of all, what's a cyborg? As they understand it, are you crazy? Why would you do this to yourself?
Scott, a provocative question out of the box, not really related to cyborgs, but anyway, can machines outperform humans in creativity, composing songs, painting pictures, whatever? What do you think?
Uh, s- Certainly they can equal them now, and then one day they will surpass them. I mean, machines continue to surpass humans. Where we thought things were in the human domain, but if you want to dig a hole, I can give you a shovel or I can give a machine. A machine can outperform any human building things, digging things, constructing things. And so then you think, okay, well, there's other things that humans are better at. And then it's like, okay, math, because, once the calculator was built, like, no, machines are better at math. And then you go, what about, and you just keep going through the list where machines uh, uh, first, outperform humans, you've seen it, with AI, with search, everything is being replaced. And so when you think about music, you go, okay, well, music is actually just mathematics. It's the vibrations, the 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 note A is 444 cycles, like they're all math, and you put chords together, and if you train on what's come before, it's not that hard to recreate music. And then if you listen to where we are today, which is already pretty amazing with certain um, generative AI music services, forget whether they're legal or not. Like Napster wasn't legal in the first days, but Suno and Udio, you can make some amazing music. And you wouldn't be able to tell the difference whether it was a human or machine. They already passed um, the Turing test. There's no question. There's no way you would know the difference whether it was a human or a machine. And maybe that they'll start to push the boundaries and introduce us to music genres that we hadn't considered yet.
That's an interesting thought. Really interesting. When talking about music and rethinking music, Jukebox is something I really have to ask you about, and it's an amazing story. Please tell us about Jukebox.
So Jukebox, a company I also co-founded in 2022 after leaving Warner Music Group after 3.5 years there. And and the notion is allowing people to invest in music as regulated securities, as an asset class. As an asset class, the only people that seem to be able to invest in it are the three major record labels: Sony, Universal, and Warner, and a dozen or so private equity backed firms that are buying up catalogs. Like we all read about it. Oh, this one sold their catalog, that artist sold their catalog. But, I don't have access to those. You don't have access to those. Fans don't have access to those. So the idea was, what if we went back to those very companies that are buying the rights, and we take a piece of the income stream from hit songs? We're talking about songs recorded by Taylor Swift and Adele and Ed Sheeran and Beyonce. These are not small acts. These are the biggest acts in the world. So we take a piece of the income stream and package it up, take it to the SEC, that's the Securities and Exchange Commission in America. And when it comes back as qualified, we've converted the income streams of hit songs into regulated securities. So securities like, you can buy 100 shares of Microsoft or 100 shares of Halo by Beyonce. Why not? And so now we've given exposure to music as an asset class to everybody. So that to what in financial terms is called retail investors, the general public that wants to buy, all the way up through accredited investors to institutional investors. And now anyone can have exposure to music and invest. And, my dream is that people will actually buy these music rights, these royalty shares, and put them in their retirement accounts. Because think about it this way: anytime a song is played, somebody's getting paid. song on the radio, streamed on Spotify, every time, might be fractions of a penny, but on the hit songs, that adds up to millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it never goes away. So imagine in your retirement, the songs that you grew up with, the songs that you're passionate are actually paying you. They're paying you in your retirement. That would be an amazing full circle. The very people that help push these artists to their success, that back in the day bought their vinyl or cassettes or CDs, to their downloads, their streams, we got you there. Now we get a little something back.
That's a really, really cool, amazing, great, super idea. What I also wanted to ask you, in the light of today's blockchain and tokenization and real world assets, how will this industry develop? Especially, you mentioned before the royalty shares of a song or multiple songs. Talking about tokenization, how it's going to be?
Well, certainly, you have to think of it in layers, or at least I think of it in layers. That the first layer was the internet, and then the web, the World Wide Web, was built on top of the internet. I think what we're seeing now is the next layer above, the Web3 layer, is built on, or being built on, the blockchain, which completely transforms how we think of content and how we access it, who owns it, who controls it, visibility. So yes, there was the crypto bubble that burst, but when it burst, nothing stopped. The bubble burst, but the companies are still plowing forward, building it. It was much like in the mid to late 90s when there was the dot-com bubble, and then it burst, and everyone's like, okay, enough for the web, go back to work, the fad is over, because they thought that the web was a fad because you didn't really do much on the web back in the early 90s, or mid 90s rather. There wasn't much to do, and when it burst, it was like, okay, so we go back to doing what we did. But then quietly other companies built out of that, like Amazon, like Google, like all the social media companies, all grew post dot-com bubble bursting. And I think that's what we're going to see with blockchain and tokenization and crypto, is all of that is just quietly being built when nobody's paying attention. And this is like lots of technology. I remember a couple of years ago, my mom went to the dentist and she said, oh, they had to take a tooth out, but they 3D printed a replacement. Like, my mom's 89 years old and she's talking about 3D printing teeth. Now, this was 3D printing was talked about like 15 and 20 years ago. And then, oh, we're moving on to the next thing. It's blockchain, it's AI. And, you get these bubbles. But what happens is it becomes part of people's lives and they don't even realize it. It's like people used to talk about augmented reality. You're like, oh, there's going to be AR, augmented reality. And then people stop talking about it. But actually, it's part of our lives and we don't even realize it. Like, if I go on to Google Maps, it takes digital information and overlays it on the real world. And if I want to go somewhere, I open up Google Maps, I look on the map, it tells me I could drive there, walk there. How am I going to get there? I follow along, it gives me the best route. It changes the route along the way. If there's a faster way, it tells me all the landmarks as I'm passing things, all of that. And when I get to my destination and I put my phone back in the pocket, I don't go, whoa, I just had the most amazing augmented reality experience. We don't even notice the technology in our lives. And I think that's what my point is when you talk about blockchain and crypto and tokenization, is this will all just happen without you even realizing it. And you look back, on it, because I think if you're talking about the technology itself, then the technology is immature. So nobody uses the terms augmented reality. They're just like, hey, I ordered some food or an Uber and I'm tracking it on my phone. That's AR. You don't use the term AR. When I started, in digital music, we used to talk about MP3s Or was it an AAC file? Like you knew the name of the file, you knew how many megabytes it was. Oh, it's a 3 meg file. You knew all of that stuff. Now, somebody wants to listen to music, they push a button on their phone. And when I say push a button, it's touch screens. There's not even buttons anymore. You push a virtual button and music plays. What file format? What codec is it in? How many megs? Where's it streaming? What platform? I don't know. I just wanted to hear a song. I pushed it and it played. Magic. We don't talk about the technology.
Magic. That's absolutely true, especially looking at what AI is doing today. I mean, I'm playing myself on a daily basis, and it's quite funny. It's quite funny.
Well, I love AI because it means to me it goes back to the original definition of Web 3, because if you can imagine, Web 1, that first layer where it was the read-only web where you could access stuff. That was really powerful. People forget how powerful it was. Like you just go online, find a website, and get all the information. That didn't exist for the entire history of humankind previously. And then all of a sudden, it might have been slow and clunky, but you could do it. And then we got into the Web 2 environment, which was the read-write web, where you could now contribute to the web. You could publish your own stuff, whether it was like shares, comments, blogs, whatever. Everyone was participating in it. What I think about AI, and the dream for me of AI, is when technology starts working for us. Because right now, we still seem to be working for tech. I still have to do a lot of work to make things happen. I can't wait for the day to say, oh, I want to go to New York, the first week of June. And then I just stop there. And the AI goes out and goes, okay, let's book you a flight. I know you fly in the One World system. So that means get you on a BA or American Airlines flight. And I know you don't like being next to the window. You want to be on the aisle, and you fly business and blah, blah, blah. And I know you don't like doing 6 a.m. flights because you have to wake up at 3 in the morning. So I found one at 10 a.m. and it just goes and does it and brings it back to me and says, here's what I found. Here's 3 or 4 options for you and prices, and probably need some, airport transportation. And I already sorted that out. And where are you going to stay? Are you going to stay with your parents? Are you going to stay in a hotel? Here's 2 or 3 options. Like, wow, technology working for me. Because every time I have to travel, it's a lot of work. I have to work on the technology. I don't want to have to work on it. I want it to do it for me. And I think this is the next 10 years that we're going to see where we can have technology working for us.
Scott, you just right now disclosed a potential idea for a new startup. You know that.
Well, that's the thing. There's a million ideas out there. That's the easy part. The hard part is, okay, good luck. Go do it. That's the hard part. Go do it.
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, go for it. Good luck.
Scott, we've prepared some quick fire questions for you. So it's kind of a quiz or quick fire with very short answers. So
oh God, I haven't been good at the short answers so far.
You were very good at long and very interesting and very deep answers, which is really, really very good. So the first one in the series is best decision you have ever made.
Best decision I ever made. Actually, it's 2. And they were both meeting people. The first one was meeting my business partner, Richard Gotterer, and then deciding almost instantly, without knowing anything about him, to go in business. And he and I started the Orchard together. And he changed my life. The other was going up and meeting my wife, Susanna, at a party. Best decision I ever made. I'm going to go up. I put my eyes on her and I'm like, I knew, I'm not even romantic, but I knew that's the girl for me. And second best decision I ever made. Or they're both equally best. They were at different times.
That's love at first glance.
Yeah, and I'm not romantic, honestly, but something about it I just knew.
What a nice story. Really beautiful. Question number two. The worst thing you have ever experienced.
God, the worst thing. It's funny because the way my brain works, I think maybe I should go to a psychologist because maybe I suppress bad things. Like I can't think. I'll tell you. Can I tell you a good thing that happened
Of
that I
course.
remember?
Of
But it's
course.
got to be quick. So back after I was struggling with the orchard, then business started doing really good, and we got this office on 100 Park Avenue, right below Grand Central Station, and my I took my parents to see the office, and they came up the elevator. The elevator doors open. In front of them are these two glass doors, and those open up, and there's a person at reception. She says, "Oh, Mr. Cohen, you're here." Yes, yes. Oh, I brought my parents. And my mom looks around and just bursts out crying because there's cubicles of people and offices and everything. And she's like, I still have no idea what you do, but I am so proud of you. And by the way,
Oh,
she still doesn't know what I do.
she still doesn't.
Has no clue.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Scott, another one. Things you love in people.
Um, I really love, the whole notion of exploration, whether it's going to different countries or cultures or exploration into tech. Um, Maybe it's part of learning, like that I love. I love that part of me, and I love that in others. That curiosity.
Things you can't stand.
Um, Two things. Maybe, well, all right, I'll go one. When people don't do what they say. Like if you commit to something, then my expectation is you're going to do that. I didn't tell you to do it. You said you were going to do it. So just honor your commitments.
That's great. That's a very, very valid point, especially in today's time. The or your favorite artist and singer or songstress.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because in life you go through phases. When I was a kid, I listened to lots of the classic rock from Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young, just a product of my generation that we listened to all that music. As I became a teenager, I got into heavy metal and all of that. And then when I got older, I really liked that kind of, so the heavy metal stuff, the Judas Priest, Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath, all of that, Metallica, all of that, AC/DC. And then when I got older, I then really fell in love with the kind of the new garage rock scene, the White Stripes, the Strokes, the Ravenettes, the Hives, all of those artists. And now I think I love them all still. It's just quite eclectic tastes.
Is there a thing that can surprise you right now, tonight, where you just say, wow?
The answer is yes, because I still find myself getting surprised and filled with wonder all the time. Um, Whether it's a new piece of technology or somebody surprises me with a piece of music or a film or a Netflix series where I still go, wow, like because that's it. We talked earlier where I'm sure that AI will continue to and technology in general will continue to grow and do things that humans can't. With that said, where we are today with humanity, I'm still in awe of people coming up with incredible ideas that I absolutely love.
Great. Great to hear that, Scott. And is there any wisdom, anything you would like to say, especially to the younger generation?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny what because it can only come from my perspective, my lived experience, but I think a lot of people growing up got the same advice back then and still to this day. which is, the conventional wisdom about going out into the world if you're young, like you can either play it safe or you can take risks. You choose, play it safe, get a good education, get a good job, work your way up at the organization. Maybe you become VP or president of the organization, whatever. Play it safe, bank your money, build your retirement fund. Or you can take risks, be a musician, a designer, an actor, an entrepreneur, set up your own company, really risky stuff. And that's your path. But as I got older, I started recognizing something. I looked at all my friends, and what was happening was lots of them that were in their mid to late 40s and into their 50s, they would lose their job. They'd be like 50 years old and whatever. The company's cutting costs. We're laying off, 20% of the workforce, and you're out the door. Now, these are people that are still, a decade or more away from their pension, their retirement. They might have kids in university. They have a mortgage on their house. They have 2 cars. And all of a sudden, they've become unemployable. Like, who wants to hire a 52-year-old former guy that was the, executive VP that's expecting this big salary? Why? We've got young kids, tech savvy. We'd rather have them. We can get 10 of them for you, 20 of them for you. And then I looked at all my friends that took the risky path, that were the entrepreneurs, that were the artists, that their band never made it. But you talk to them today and they're like, oh, I just did the score for a film. And now I have this commercial that used one song I composed. And, the graphic designer that lived on a couch is now like, oh, I just did for this new hotel chain. I just did their logo. And what I started to discover was the riskiest thing you can do if you're young is to play it safe. Because it might feel safe in the early days, but you hit a certain age and you've just risked everything on your corporate job, on your perfect world. And those people that took the risks early and they were betting on themselves and their talents and their passions, those people seem to be the most secure. Some of them are wealthy, some of them aren't, but they're in control of their own destiny. They've carved out a place for them that they can't be replaced. And so I think the riskiest thing you can do is to play it safe.
That's a great advice. Scott, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for a really, really, really cool talk, for your time, for inspiration. And I'm looking very, very much forward to talking with you another time.
Well, thanks. Anytime you want me back, I'm happy to oblige.
Thank you very much, Scott.
All right. Have a great day.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.